This fourth one is probably going to cause some controversy. So you want to create shots that are cinematic. I'm not going to use that word anymore. That's just a catchword that a lot of people search for. In reality, we all want to create shots that are aesthetic, good looking. At the same time, there's more to life than being good looking. We shouldn't just look at it in terms of what shot looks good. As I go through these 8 tips that will help you as a filmmaker to create better looking videos, and videos are made up of many, many shots. It's not just about the shot that makes it look good. There's so many factors at play. Let's dig into these. The first shot that looks aesthetic is actually a shot that belongs to a sequence. The reason why I'm putting this one first is I want to emphasize that a lot of cinematographers, people who are passionate about cameras and lighting and creating intriguing stories, I would say more cinematographers though, we tend to like to analyze frames. We like to look at a still image, check out the lighting, the contrast ratios, the framing, the composition, all of these different elements, but we also have to remember that it's not just about a single frame, because when we're making films, when we're making commercials, when we're making documentaries, there's 24 frames in a second. A kind of strange analogy that I like to think of, because I'm also interested in fitness and nutrition, is if we zoom into a bowl of food and we just look at a broccoli floret, then we could say this bowl of food is very healthy. But if we zoom out and we look at, actually it's a bowl of chips, it's a bowl of Doritos, and there's one broccoli floret in there, then is that bowl of food actually healthy? It's not necessarily about the shot, the single shot itself, but it's about how does that serve the story. So for example, something that's more practical that you could apply this to is that instead of looking at one single shot, whether it's aesthetic, whether it's good looking or not, zoom out and look at a common number that people like to use is 3 to 5 shots. Think about 3 to 5 angles to cover the same subject and topic, and that way when it gets cut together, yes, there are 3 to 5 different shots. The impact that they have as a collective of shots is so much more impactful and therefore aesthetic and cinematic. The second shot that is going to look aesthetic with some tweaking and maneuvering is the mirror shot. So I have 2 different examples of this. There are a lot of people on YouTube and filmmakers and cinematographers who they love lamps. And lamps are, yes, they are very cinematic. They are aesthetic because they look natural and they can be used very effectively as practical lighting. Something else that people don't talk about as much are mirrors. Placing mirrors in your frames. If you notice in gyms, they will put mirrors in a lot of places because it makes the gym look bigger. It can make your space look bigger and more dynamic because instead of having one moving object, if you have a reflection of that object in a mirror, therefore you have 2 moving objects and it's therefore that much more dynamic. In the short film that we filmed last year, we had to strategically place 2 mirrors into this frame, and therefore when the main character would do her acting, it would then therefore be effectively tripled. So it makes the frame more dynamic and more interesting looking. Now another application of a mirror shot would be a mirror out of frame. I realized this when I was filming in a short film a couple years back here in Taiwan. The gaffers were using mirrors to reflect light because in reality, light is being reflected everywhere. Mirrors can not only be used in the frame itself, but can also be used to reflect light as we did in a commercial as well. It's a very effective way to make light look natural and therefore make your frame and your shot look more aesthetic. This next shot we're going to talk about is shots with good sound design. When we're making our videos, when we're making our films, remember that sound is arguably 50% of the end result. I'm very guilty of this. I don't always put so much effort into my sound design, but for the short film that we filmed last year, I actually reached out to a team in Canada that I really look up to because they did a really cool motorcycle commercial crossover with a sports brand. I reached out to them to do the sound design for our 2-minute short film. My understanding is that they break down sound design into 2 components. One is going to be the music itself, and then the second is going to be the actual sound that makes the overall visuals of our piece more immersive. The quote that they gave me was $10,000 for a 2-minute short film. Now, this short film, the budget itself was $10,000. We did not have the budget to double it and therefore afford the sound design. Why I'm telling you this is because if we had a $10,000 budget, maybe it would have made financial sense to budget $5,000 of that towards the sound design and the music. I'm curious what you think about this. Please leave a comment below if you have an opinion about how much of the budget should be put towards the sound design. But in my opinion, just off the top of my head, I think it makes sense that if half of the result is going to be determined by the quality of the sound design, it's going to make your shots be way better, without a doubt. With good sound design, with good foley, with good music, I mean, realistically, we just hire a sound guy and that's not going to be half of the budget. And in terms of post-production, I feel like that's where the money can really increase quite quickly. This fourth one is probably going to cause some controversy. I really like out of focus shots. Out of focus shot could even include a rack focus, a reveal type of shot, right? But it doesn't have to be that. It can be thought of as B-roll. An out of focus shot is more of a B-roll type of shot that will mix up the pacing of your video so that not everything is so sharp, but also let your viewers' eyes to relax a bit. Out of focus shots are beautiful. Like, people love bokeh, right? People are obsessed with that. It has a very special feeling with it. For example, the Joker was shot with a large format sensor, and therefore the depth of field is unique. And that's also what I mean by out of focus, is strategically using out of focus, not just in a conventional sense of shooting wide open all the time, changing the way that people view the world. Usually things are quite sharp if you have normal vision. This next shot I want to talk about is, I'm going to call it the one take shot, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that your entire video is one take. It doesn't really necessarily matter the length of it, but it's more about one take shots require precision. They require planning, very good execution, and control. I'll give you two examples. I had my Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4K. I had it on Red King Glide Cam. In terms of lighting, we had two RE 1000 watt lights as backlight, two of them, and then we had a Kino Flow panel as the key light, and I was just following the talent around. We happened to have a shot in here that lasted a little bit long. That actually wasn't that impressed with, because that wasn't really planned. That was pretty run and gun style, which is fine. For another music video I shot, it was technically a 2-shot for like a maybe 4-minute video, and that one required a lot of planning and timing, and I did this shot by myself without a first AC, and I was using an anamorphic lens. I was doing it handheld. I think I was shooting at T4. Anamorphic lens has a crazy focus throw, so it wasn't easy, but if I remember correctly, we probably did it like 8 times to get the shot. What I'm basically saying for one take shots is they can feel very real if they're not planned, like in a documentary sense where you're just following a character. They can feel very real. In that sense, it will be aesthetic and relatable, but then you can take it to the other extreme, more like commercials or in short films where you plan out the lighting and you have art direction team, wardrobe, everything is locked in place. When you have a team like that and it comes together just how it should be, that is very impressive, but that tends to be a little bit more unrelatable and more towards quality production, which is not a bad thing. Different tools for different types of jobs. So another shot that I have in here is static shot, the tripod shot. There were a couple of years in my career as a DP, as a cinematographer, where while watching movies, I would only look at camera movement because I was so obsessed with how are these people moving around the camera to communicate these shots. And most of the time I was ignoring the static shots. I was always focusing on like, oh, are they pushing in, they're pulling out, how are they following their subjects? Mostly, how are they moving the camera throughout space? Don't forget the power of static shots. And when I say static shots, I don't just mean fixed on a tripod. I mean mounting your camera in weird and interesting places will really mix it up and make your shots more aesthetic. Shots that have pro-level contrast. Most commonly talked about is light. So you have pockets of shadows, highlights, basically layers of light. But you can also be talking about color contrast, planning your wardrobe, what colors are placed in your frame, and that can really change the quality of aesthetic of your shots. Put myself in a position to look more at false colors, and while we're talking about shots with good contrast, things to also be aware of is contrast ratios. When we shot this commercial, we had 2 cameras and we were constantly checking the false colors for both of the cameras to make sure they match, but also to make sure that we had nice contrast, direct the gaffing team to properly light these interviews. Pro-level contrast, or highly planned and strategically executed contrast shots. Again, this one I think is kind of controversial. Shots that are yielded from a team. I don't want to discourage everyone and say that you have to have big budget and have to have a big crew to have high quality and aesthetic shots. Thinking about all of the different contributing teams and different aspects that contribute to a shot. So before I mentioned the gaffing team, the art direction team, even just the location itself. Of course, if you can, you want to hire a sound design team, but if you can't, then do it yourself. If you can, hire a wardrobe team and art direction team, but if you can't, then do it yourself. Maybe it's better to not overthink things and just shoot, which, yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just in some random park filming because I wanted to film in other locations that are way more aesthetic. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, is work with people who have passion and expertise in other areas that you lack. Because ultimately filmmaking is a team effort. If you really want to elevate your shots to the next level and make the most cinematic shots, get more people on board who are also passionate about this. Get professional actors if you can, and just basically do what you can within your own means without, making yourself bankrupt by spending all your money and hiring all these crew. Those are the 8 shots. I'm going to list them again because I put them in my email. I really wanted to get this out to you. If you have any extra shots or any tips, please leave them below in the comments and be sure to subscribe. I have 4 other videos planned right now, but yeah, I'm gonna keep on churning out content. I have a shoot next week. And I'm going to be using my FS7 II. That will actually mark the 1-year anniversary of owning this camera. And I'm going to talk more about the financials behind it, how I haven't done the math yet, but I'm pretty sure I've probably 5x to my money. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you.